right? And Mike. Mark is evidently tied up behind an accident on I-37, so he'll be coming in. I want to welcome you all. Hope everybody had a great New Year, good Christmas holidays, and I guess we're ready now to get back to work on this. Let me remind you that the meeting is being webcast, so everything that we do and say is available for public viewing. I want to give a special welcome today to Ricky Watley. He's agreed to complete Ronnie Ledbetter's term from Cisco College. Ronnie was having difficulties making the meetings because of council meetings conflicting with our scheduled meetings, so we want to welcome you. And Ricky, did he kind of bring you up to date? Nothing? Okay. Well, I think we'll assign that task to Gary, too. How's that, Gary? You can chat with him a little bit and help bring him up to date on what we've done. Also, again, we want to give the official welcome to Rex Peebles. We had him as our guest last time, and now he's here officially, so welcome, Rex. We have the minutes. Everybody got the minutes sent to him. You've got them in front of you. We should officially approve these minutes, as hopefully everybody's had a chance to read them, except possibly Ricky. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. Okay. Let's get a motion, then we'll do the discussion. Yes, sir. Okay. And you want to do the second and then do a discussion? Okay. Discussion.
My question.
Oh, hit your button.
It's a new year. Is that better? My question was, is there a official record that we can refer to if we wanted to look back at membership by name and no length of terms of service, since it's not included in this minutes? You have it where? I couldn't hear you. Are you speaking in your mic?
He doesn't even have one. He can't turn it on.
Okay, touche, I guess. But yes, it's either posted on the CT, this Leadership Council website, or else we will make sure it's posted. And it is posted.
Great, thank you. As well as the new charge and all of that. Great.
And do you have all our terms? Do we need to tell you or anything? Okay, you got everything. Okay, with that comment rather, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Oh, I had the motion, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next we'll move into a report that we're going to get on El Paso by William. We were going to have this last time, but instead we got a very good substitute one from Mark, so now's your turn, William.
Madam Chair, thank you. Members of the Board, Commissioner, members of the Coordinating Board staff, always a pleasure to share some of the wonderful things that we're doing in El Paso. I took this from a keynote presentation that I did at NISOD last May and have updated it. The early college high schools were part of that particular presentation. We're working on an initiative that we term scaling up by moving down, and the early college high schools are a big part of that. Prior to telling you much more about the early college high schools, for a context, we're out in El Paso, far west. We serve a population in El Paso County of 827,000, just a little over 827,000, of which 81% is Hispanic. Our service area includes Hudspeth County, much smaller county with regards to population. Our taxing district is El Paso County proper. We have 25% of our population living below the poverty level as compared to the Texas level of 17%. So we earn 75 cents for every dollar that's earned in Texas and approximately 72 cents for every dollar that's earned in the United States. And 74% of our population has less than an associate's degree. So this is what drives us at the institution. This is what drives the higher education institutions within the El Paso area. We have a wonderful wonderful partnership with the University of Texas at El Paso. We look at this data regularly, and we obviously want to change this data. We're very astute to the fact that the key to economic mobility and social mobility is education. Higher education is by far the highest disruptor of poverty. And so this drives us. As you see, this data shows the more you learn, the more you earn on average. And so we share this data with our community. We share this data with our high school partners in order to increase dual credit, early college high schools, the college going rate, and ultimately completion amongst our students in El Paso County. I'd be remiss if I didn't share some of the accolades that this institution has received over the years. We're first amongst almost 1,200 community colleges in awarding associate degrees to Latino students, first amongst those same community colleges in awarding associate degrees to minority students. And we're 16th, actually, overall in this last June piece. Says 21st. I apologize. We're actually 16th overall. We're first in Hispanic faculty, and we're first in Hispanic enrollment nationally. We were the 2011 Excelencia in Education Award winner for our early college high schools, and we were also a finalist that year for our college readiness initiatives. The 2011 Achieving the Dream Leah Meyer Austin Award winner. And this year, in 2014, we've been designated a top military advanced education college with Fort Bliss and BRAC. We are very happy to serve our soldiers, our men and women in uniform, and so we are particularly proud of that recent designation. We have 5 campuses throughout the El Paso area, and you see the variety of our campuses. The first one opening in 1974. The institution was created in '69 and opened classes in '71 at Fort Bliss at the Logan Heights Barracks in Fort Bliss. And we've somewhat come full circle because we have those 5 campuses, and we're currently in the planning stages for our 6th campus, which will be located on Fort Bliss. And we are now in negotiation with the architect for the design services, a master planning service to take us out to 2025, as well as the architectural design for the Fort Bliss campus, which we will move forward. It never goes as fast as I would like or we would like. I've let the board know that if everything were to go perfect, we would open campus fall of 16, more than likely spring of 17. And as we go forward with the negotiation, I'd say probably fall of 17 at this point. We're really focused on 4 particular areas at El Paso Community College. We're focused on engagement at all levels. Student engagement, the data is very clear that if students are engaged within your respective campus, their likelihood for success rises dramatically. So we want to ensure that our students are engaged, that they're welcome in each of our respective campuses. We're focused on partnerships. Partnerships with business and industry, partnerships with our K through 12 partners, partnerships with the university. We know we can't do it alone. This has to be a collaborative effort within the region, and so we're very focused on partnerships. We're focused on creating a college-going culture. The latest data shows that just over 60% of our recent high school graduates go straight to college. Not El Paso Community College, not UTEP, any college within the state of Texas. And therefore, we need to increase and create a college-going culture. And finally, we know that higher education truly you only see the fruition and the fruits of higher education if you complete what you began. And so we're very focused on completion. So I'm rather simple. We're focused on engagement, partnerships, creating a college-going culture, and completion, EPCC. Our early college high school entail all 4 of those. They're very engaged students. They obviously are creating a college-going culture. It's direct partnership, not only with our K through 12 partners in our school districts, but also, as you'll see as I go through the presentation, with the University of Texas at El Paso. And finally, these students complete. These students have, on average, a completion of over 90%. Completing their associate degree. This is early college high school dual credit from the time that we began our early college high schools in 2006 with 125 students to this past academic year where we're serving just under 1,600 early college high school dual credit students. In addition to these, we serve approximately 3,000 additional traditional dual credit students. The Mission Early College High School was the first early college high school created in El Paso. When I worked at South Texas, we were told if we wanted to see how early college high school should work, we should visit El Paso. We went and we visited both of these particular early college high schools, the Mission Early College High School and the Valle Verde Early College High School. Mission has 484 students, and through last academic year had graduated 401 associate degrees. It has received exemplary status from TEA each year of its existence, and it was one of only 2 El Paso schools that were designated as National Blue Ribbon schools in 2012. Those first graduates graduated in May 2009. If you look at that, that's 3 years, which shows you that the expectations of these students, if we raise the bar, they will meet those expectations. They graduated the first class 3 years after they started. So after their junior year in high school. The Valle Verde is in its 7th year of operation. It serves 360 students, and we have since graduated 152 students through last May. It has also received exemplary status from TEA each year of its existence. The Northwest Early College High School, we opened in July of 2008, and I'd be remiss, pardon me for not mentioning, each of these respective early college high schools were opened with seed money, grant money that was provided by different foundations. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, TEA, and Educate Texas have helped us through each of these respective ones. Northwest, the Greater Texas Foundation provided the seed money to open this particular early college high school. It's in its 6th year of operation. It's a smaller early college high school with 279 students, and 65 students have earned their associate degrees. It did receive exemplary status in 2009 and 10. We're working to ensure that it continues to receive those. The Trans Mountain Early College High School opened also in July of 2008, and it was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And our partner in each of these particular applications has been Educate Texas, based in Dallas with an office here in Austin. They have been tremendous partners in assisting us in the application process, ensuring that we meet the standards and the expectations of early college high schools. The Trans Mountain Early College High School is in its 6th year of operation, 413 students. They've awarded 91 associate degrees to date. They also have received exemplary status each year of its existence from TEA, and they are a T-STEM designated early college high school. We have a very unique collaborative early college high school, which is the Cotton Valley Early College High School, which is 3 different rural school districts that come together to form one early college high school. So essentially, those 3 school districts form a 4th high school, which is an early college high school. It's in its 4th year of operation. It serves 226 students, and TEA helped us with the initiation of this one. And then we have the Clint ISD Early College Academy. This is a college for all model, where the entire school, the entire high school, will be an early college high school. And it's expected to impact the entire district. It serves 196 students, and it is in its 2nd year of operation, again, funding through the Greater Texas Foundation to assist us in moving this forward. The expectation is key. We firmly believe that no student rises to low expectations, so we set the bar high, and our students meet those expectations to the extent that they graduate early. These are early college high school accelerated students that graduate either a semester or a year ahead of schedule. So they'll do the associate's degree in 3 years of high school. And as you see, it started with the very first class at Mission Early College High School, where in 2009 we had 23 graduate early. The next year it went up to 61 of those students who graduated early. And you see the data. In 2011 we had a total of 117 students graduate early. And in 2012 it was 87. And this past year it was 100 students who graduated early. So they've finished an associate degree and they're still in high school. So what do? Well, before that, I'd be remiss. We were very fortunate to host Secretary Duncan at the Trans Mountain Early College High School. This was part of his, Secretary Duncan's, education tour of 2013. It was his only stop in Texas, and it happened to be at one of our early college high school, a T-STEM designated early college high school. We were happy to host him. Not so happy to take pictures standing up, as he's 6'5". So, yeah, that was an interesting photo for me, at least. So our students that graduate early, those early college high school students, they continue at the University of Texas at El Paso. So they're seniors in high school and they're juniors at UTEP. And the university does not have the authority to waive tuition. So how do we pay for those students to go into their junior year at university while they're still in high school? Well, we have a transfer scholarship program, which the coordinating board recognized in 2008 as a star award. So we're certainly proud of that in combination with the University of Texas at El Paso. 100% of these accelerated students receive a Greater Texas Foundation scholarship to attend courses at the University of Texas at El Paso. 50% of the UTEP early college high school students are accelerated. So half of them are moving forward while they're still in high school. Their average GPA for this past fall semester was 3.08 at the University of Texas at El Paso. And 2/3 of our graduates continue to UTEP. UTEP does a wonderful job of working closely with the college and with the ISDs to ensure that these students continue their education and move on to the university. We're now between 10 and 15% of the junior class, and that number will continue to rise as our early college high school students continue to go through the pipeline. As you see, we're up to 532 early college high school students that have now transferred to University of Texas at El Paso. And that first student, in May 2011, we had a 19-year-old student who received her bachelor's in psychology from the University of Texas at El Paso after going through our early college high school program. These students are continuing into graduate school. We have students who've been accepted into doctoral programs now that are in their early 20s. Truly impacting the closing the gaps goals that the state and the coordinating board has laid out. We firmly believe that this is a way to scale up by moving down into the high schools, create that college-going culture, provide the opportunity for these students to receive college credit while they're still in the ISD system. And so what are our next steps? Well, we're now planning out to 2025, and in order to continue creating that college-going culture, we've begun an elementary school adoption program. That's a picture from our first elementary school. We adopted Campestre Elementary School in the Socorro Independent School District, one of the poorest elementary schools in that particular district, so that we create that college-going culture. As I said, we're planning out to 2025. First graders are our freshman class of 2025. It's not that far out. And we set the expectation with these students that they will be going to college. We educate the students that they have the opportunity to take advantage of dual credit or the early college high schools, and then to move forward within the college proper or transfer to the university. So we continue to scale up at El Paso Community College and focus on those 4 pillars of what I believe are student success: engagement, partnerships, creating a college-going culture, and ultimately completion. Madam Chair, I'm open to questions.
Could I ask a question
Please.
about your graduates from the early college high school? Is there one particular area in which they tend to be getting the degree, or is it a cluster of 3 or 4 that they predominantly do this?
It's a great question, Dr. Gardner. What we see is in the T-STEM, obviously, they're focused on the Trans Mountain Early College High School. They're focused on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and they're moving forward in that segment. And the other, the 4 that are on our campuses, we have a broader array of offerings that we can offer them, as they can just go straight, during their junior and senior year, go straight into classes integrated with traditional students. And so they look at a general AA, and they'll look at different fields within that Associate of Arts as well as the Associate of Science. So the 4 that are on our campuses have a broader array. The other 2 are just now starting to move forward in the process. We did have in December our ceremony. I did see Cotton Valley early college high school students crossing the stage, so we will report early graduates next year. They're receiving general AAs and ASs primarily.
Another question is,
Sure.
I assume, if not all, the majority are going to UTEP. Do you have some students that are going to other universities in the state, and are the other universities receiving them as they should?
That's a great question. You'd be the first to know if they weren't, by the way.
Well,
in
I
any
wanted
kind
to
of
say,
transfer
if
dispute.
not, we would want to know, so thank
Absolutely.
you for saying that.
No, absolutely. The coordinating board has been fantastic with regards to ensuring that the core and the degrees transfer. They are primarily going to the University of Texas at El Paso. Obviously, location is key, but UTEP does a wonderful job of recruiting these students. The Wasslager Foundation has, and it's ending this year, provides transfer scholarships. A lot of the transfer scholarships are going to early college high school students, which is $6,000 a year for them to continue their education at UTEP. So 2/3 of the graduates do go on to UTEP. The others go throughout the state. Primary transfer institutions: University of Texas at Austin, UTSA, Texas Tech, given the location. And we have not to date had any issue with regards to transfer.
I guess I'll make a point I frequently make, and I think it's worth making, is statewide 34-35% of our baccalaureate graduates have at least 30 hours from a community college. UTEP, it's not quite 50%. Last time I looked, it was something like 49.8%. So you're clearly making a huge contribution to the number of baccalaureate graduates here. And I think they've, as an institution, have increased by about 2,000 graduates since 2000. And I noticed, by the way, I looked at the data, and your number of Hispanic graduates at El Paso has gone up, I think it was maybe threefold in that 10-year period. So that's remarkable. Aside from leading the country, I think the fact that you've tripled your Hispanic graduates in a decade is very remarkable.
Well, we certainly appreciate the kudos. We still, just based on the demographics that we serve, we still have so much more to do. The staff, the faculty are committed and dedicated to ensure that we increase the educational attainment level of the region. We know that that is the key to economic viability in El Paso, and so we'll continue to move that forward.
Part of that kudo is that I'm talking about graduates. So
That's exactly
you
right.
always we're dominated by Hispanic students, but you've tripled the number of Hispanics who are actually graduating.
We've had we've doubled enrollment, and we've had nearly a 300% increase in the number of graduates. We've been very focused on completion. It is the key to ensuring that you see the fruits and the benefits of higher education. Isn't just participating; it's graduating.
Are there any other questions? Well, we thank you very much for your presentation, and Ricky, for your information on this. One of the things that we're trying to do with this committee is I wanted people in the coordinating board to understand what's unique about community colleges, and then at the same time we want to know more about the board and the employees. And so that brings us into our next item, where we're going to ask Judy and Susan if they'll come forward. They're just going to give us a little bit of idea of what it is they do. They've presented before us before, but I think we just want to know just exactly what their role is, and so we get to know them better. This is Susan Brown, the Assistant Commissioner, Planning and Accountability, and Judy Laredo, Assistant Commissioner. B through 16. Who's going to start?
I guess I will. I know quite a few of you and have worked with you for a long time, so it's nice to meet you. I am Assistant Commissioner for Planning and Accountability. I'll tell you a little bit about what my division does. We collect all the data y'all send in. That's a big part of it. So all of the reports that you send to the coordinating board as far as your enrollment, degrees, all of that information, all the accountability system stuff, all the almanac information comes in and through my division. We run that and get that out there. So we work with your staff very closely on a lot of different topics. We also work with the formula funding. We staff the formula funding committees, and we've worked with Mike on the TSTC return value model for his funding. We also work with the universities and the health-related institutions, but we review facilities for the TSTCs, the Lamar State Colleges, and for the universities and health science centers. A big part of what we do, we also do the evaluation mostly for GD staff, the projects that have gone out, Commissioner, I think it's contagious. The DevEd demo information, we work with the evaluators. A lot of that is actually contracted out. We work with the contractors to make sure that we are getting the right information. Another part that some of y'all may know about, William may know, is we work with what we call the Pathways projects, where we have teams of faculty and teachers. Thank you very much. Teams of faculty and teachers that work together to look at the curricular alignment in different areas. So we have an English, math, science, and history, social studies, generally groups, and they work together to make sure that the alignment with K-12, actually works very well with the early college high schools, that the alignment works so that those students are actually college ready when they enter college, whether that's dual credit, early college, high school, whatever, so that that all feeds together and that they're talking to each other. We've had very good response on that. Trying to think what else we do. Obviously, we run
assigned.
other duties as assigned. We do a lot of special studies that come through the legislature. We do evaluations, as I said. Let's see. The biggest part of the staff actually works with the data to get the accountability system ready. Some of you may or may not know, we have staff members who run a lot of your iPads data and put that out, because it's much easier for one person or one entity to run all the data and get it out instead of it having to be run at 50 different colleges. So we run a lot of your iPads information and put it out there for y'all to just pull off and use and submit your iPads reports that way. So that's pretty much what we do.
Well, very good. Thank you so much, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You mentioned your
No, I didn't, and I should have. We actually are working with RAND. We did SB 414, which is the study of working with the baccalaureate, community colleges offering baccalaureate programs. We have contracted with RAND Corporation, or RAND, I don't know what they call themselves these days, to go out and interview. You've seen some information. I know, Mimi, they're going, I think, to meet with you next week.
Yes.
So we're setting up interviews, or they are setting up interviews around. We have had one webinar informing everybody about what we were going to do. They are now doing the meetings. They're trying to get information and working with workforce employers, that kind of stuff, to see what kind of skills. They will be presenting kind of an update at our January board. Then they will come back and talk again at the April board meeting with a draft that will go out to everybody for comment, that sort of thing.
timing of that was such that we have about 2 months for some real considered response from the institutions. We didn't want that to have to be a quick turnaround once you see the draft of that report. So you'll have adequate time to look at it, talk with your staff, and provide some feedback before we finalize the report.
Very good. Well, thank you, Susan. It seems like you keep pretty busy anyway, right?
Madam Chair, may I comment, if I could?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Mike.
Susan did me the honor of calling me out by name, so I'm going to do the same thing back to her. Everyone knows that TSTC ended up with a new funding formula at the request of the legislature, and that didn't just happen. It happened because of the leadership of Susan and her staff coordinating the Comptroller's Office, the Legislative Budget Board, the Ray Marshall Workforce Economics Center at UT, Ray Perriman, outside consultants, and all kinds of other folks. And Susan personally chaired that entire effort through what is now a 4-year process and did an outstanding job of herding all these cats to comply with the directions that the legislature gave us. And so she deserves major kudos. I can tell you, as a member of the higher ed community, she did an outstanding job of fulfilling the co-board's mission of coordination and leadership, and couldn't have anything nicer to say about her, except she's done an amazing job for us
Thank you
and
very
for
much.
all of higher ed.
I
I appreciate
that.
you saying that, because that's certainly true. But I want to add that this is a perfect example of how you can have a collegial effort between the coordinating board and institutions to make something happen that's good, that everybody thinks is good for everyone. And so it was a really great cooperative process. And so
It was.
as good as Susan is, she
I don't do it without a wonderful staff.
And there were common values held here that worked very well for everyone.
And I don't do any of this work. I've told my staff that I go to meetings so that they can do the real work. And so I have a great staff that works very hard on all this stuff.
Well, thank you so much. Judy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, members of the panel and Madam Chairperson. Thank you for asking me to tell you a little bit about our work here at the Coordinating Board. I oversee the Division of P16 Initiatives and have had the pleasure of working with a wonderful staff over the last 6 years. Much of this work, of course, was begun right before I got here with the development of the college and career readiness standards. P16 is creating that seamless pipeline between K-12 and our world in post-secondary education all the way through completion of degree and even into graduate school, because some people refer to it as P20. And so it just depends on where you're coming from. But our work began with the creation of those college and career readiness standards, which are now embedded in the K-12 curriculum of public education. Our work is divided really into two categories. Our college readiness work, I have a unit of staff that focuses on that. And then I have a staff that focuses on educator preparation and special projects related to that. Under the college and career readiness standards, as Susan said, they have evaluated many of our projects because, fortunately, we received a lot of money over the last previous two bienniums, to work on creating this college-going culture with success into our pipeline and completion. And that's been the efforts of closing the gap, which is what we have worked on. With that funding money that we received, we looked at ways to create that college-going culture into participation and success on our side of the house. We have learned some things, and there are things that maybe did not work, but that's where evaluation tied in. What we have tried to do is help our institutions realize that when we take students in, it is our obligation to help them complete. Whether they come in with deficiencies or they're ready to go and learn, it is our responsibility to work with them and help them realize our dreams as someone helped each of us realize our own dreams. This division has also been responsible for the major redesign of developmental education, and that work has been going on over the last 4 years. In addition to that, we are now very heavily engaged with the redesign and delivery of adult basic education. We also have been very heavily involved in the development of the TSI based on the Texas Success Initiative rider that was deemed to our agency. So that division has kept quite busy over the last 6 years, moving this needle and ensuring that students are entering our pipeline and completing. You know that right now we are very heavy with ABE. We will be out in the field, and I think we will be in El Paso. I can't remember the date, but thank you so much for opening up your campus to us. We will be making visits to 9 institutions starting on Monday. Amarillo is the first college, starting on Monday, to take the TSI operational plan to share with the field to get input, so that as we move forward, before we go to the board, we've had enough input from the field who are working with these students to help them as much as we can. So that's a major effort that's going on right now. Along on the teacher ed side of the house, or educator quality, you probably are aware that we've had the Gentex campaign that was started, I guess now probably 5 years ago, and that is, and you've got pictures behind you, Generation Texas. Part of our College Access grant that we had, College Access Challenge grant, we received funding for the federal government for 4 years. Unfortunately, we lost the funding this year because of the fact that there were cuts in higher education. This is money that comes to every state based on a formula. And when you don't maintain a certain amount of money or funding level in higher ed and it's cut back and it's disproportionate to any other cuts, then of course we lost that funding. But with that funding, we were able to do much around college readiness. And one of those issues or initiatives was the Generation Texas statewide campaign, the creation of that campaign. We also have done our work with providing scholarship money for students, especially in the STEM areas. We are working in the STEM areas right now under that unit We have funded for 3 institutions to help us in the retraining of teachers as well as pre-service teachers, those coming in the pipeline around math, science, and technology. We have worked with 2 major institutions in the redesign of the delivery of educator preparation. We have a federal grant that channels through to us from TEA for the teaching or the reteaching of teachers in the field in those major areas of math, science, social studies, and English language arts. And so we're never lost for work. This P16 pipeline, in my opinion, having been in public education for 17 years, all the way to the superintendency, we didn't think of college. We didn't think of post-secondary education in those days, but we know that no matter what we do, whether we choose to leave high school and go straight to work, it still requires skilled performance in reading, in writing, and certainly in mathematics. We've also learned that for students who want to move forward further in that pipeline, that there may be some skill levels that must be a little bit more accelerated in order to even find success, for example, in the engineering profession, etc. So I think that our work has truly connected us with TEA. We've had a very seamless connection with that agency in working with their efforts for the implementing of their curriculum, and now around HB 5, which I think is exciting because for the first time, students will be able to make real choices in high school about which way they might be headed. Many students know when they're juniors that they're not ready to go to college. They don't want to go into a 4-year program or even a 2-year program at that time. They may need to go to work, but they need to go to work with skills. My greater example is to say to you that if you walk into McDonald's, they are not standing in front of a burner flapping a hamburger patty. They are working with technology in order to process that hamburger that you and I get. And so you don't just walk in and put on your apron and start cooking. It does take skills, and that's what I think is important under HB 5. And your work in the community college system is so vital. I am a community college product. I went there for 2 years because I knew that I was not ready for the 4-year world. And so when you see all that's available through you, the technical training, the academic training, that other students like myself would not have found success like I did later, your world is just so key to what we have done in P16 in our work in helping inform students. Our other major effort that is moving forward is our Advised Texas model, which is immediate college graduates going into the field and working with high school students as early as 9th grade and helping them realize this pipeline and how you connect to this pipeline. The population of students in our state, many of their parents do not understand college. They don't even know how to access it. For them, it's a dream. They know they want their kids to go to the community college, to go get training, but they don't know how to do it. So I think these are exciting times for us. It's exciting times as we look at our programs and we redesign based on this 21st century, this workforce model, the academic model, because they're not separate entities. They do go hand in hand. So that's been our work over the last 6 years, and we will continue to forge forward.
Well, thank you. And Judy, you mentioned HB5 while you were speaking, and the next item on our agenda is a discussion of the impact of HB5 on community colleges. Do you want to just go into that?
Well, right now we don't have a more current update than last time, but I will tell you that I have been in dialogue with TEA, and I think the impact that HB5 has brought is that where we were really struggling with our work around P16 councils to help bring entities together, whether it be church groups, whether it be business and industry, community college, 4-year institutions, all of those entities that in a community really own education. That's what their pipeline is for the community members that live in that area. And so what I think this has done for us under HB5, it has really brought that connection together. You all know that as part of HB5, the community colleges, the colleges, or even four-year institutions are really connected around some of this curriculum. The delivery of career technical, I mean, you're the seat for career technical. There are high schools that do offer it, but you are the major deliverer of that service. The curriculum work around students who may not be college ready, connecting you with the high schools in order to prepare those college prep courses, that is a real connection. We didn't have that before. We had dialogue, as Susan has alluded to, in our Pathway project, but I think this is where the impact has become even greater. I do know that the K-12 side of the house, because of the counselor involvement, which will also involve your counselors, the counselor involvement around advising, which is a major piece of this curriculum bill that will have to be done with students as early as 9th grade, especially if they are choosing career technical tracks, will probably involve your counselors as well. The State Department is creating what they call academies, counselor academies across the state in order to provide this training. I do know that there are many school systems. In fact, I am going to go participate in one here in Austin. The school districts are already beginning to educate parents and educate students as low as middle school on HB5 and the curriculum that students will be looking at to make choices of the 5 tracks that will be available. So the state board meets, I think it's the 27th of January. This will be the last reading on the curriculum and on the rules around HB5. And so probably at your next meeting, there will be much more to present on the finality. But school districts have not waited. They are moving forward with the information that they do have, because there is a lot in terms of the course offerings as well as the information to parents, because when you enter that 9th grade is when you sign off on one of those 5 endorsements, or the distinguished track, which will take you, moving you to the 4-year degree.
Any questions?
Yeah, Kristen. Yeah, Kristen has. Dr. Kristen Kramer is the individual that oversees the college and career readiness side of our house, along where DevEd and ABE reside. She also was one of the major individuals in my division, along with Dr. Jarrell Booker, who did the analysis of HB5. So she might want to share some things with you as well.
Okay, yes.
I do have one question before you finish, Judy. You mentioned the counselor academies or counseling academies around the state. Could you tell us a little bit more about those? What is all that about? And maybe it's something I ought to already know, but I don't know.
We have counselors in every high school. On average, there's about 1 counselor to every 400 students. The counselors, as part of this package on 8B5, will be the major players in delivering the information about this curriculum and how to make the curriculum choices to parents and students. Well, the counselors have had to be trained because HB5 itself is a new curriculum redesign. And so they are doing training sessions around the state, and what they call the K-12 side of the house, TEA, is doing counselor academies across the state to train all counselors on this new curriculum. And I'm sure they're probably creating toolkits with information to provide to parents. And so that is what, when I reference counselor academies, that's what it is. It's the retraining of the counselors to be able to do this new task that has been assigned to them under HB5.
And I'm very interested in that, because one of the focuses at Galveston College is our counseling department, our counseling group is being changed to a student success organization. And counseling, and particularly for returning students who are not traditional or coming back after being out in the workforce or whatever, are particularly in need of better counseling than we have been providing as far as, that's a personal opinion. But Are you considering anything along those lines for the community colleges?
I'm going to let Dr. Kramer speak to that because we just talked about it yesterday in terms of our work on our side of the house and what we could do with our college counselors in order to not only help inform them around this, but also our work around our own efforts with developmental education and the redesign of the advising process. So let me let Kristen go ahead and speak to you.
Thank you.
Okay, and Kristen, you might also go ahead and give us a brief update on the ABE also, okay?
Would you like me to start with the HB5 and move into
Go
the
ahead,
ABE?
since we're on the HB5 now.
Sure.
Yes.
And I don't have a lot to add, but I can say that what we've been hearing from some of our community partners and some of the collaborations that have already been happening between school districts and community colleges to date, there have already been faculty groups that are starting to focus on especially these local course options that need to be developed and implemented in the school districts. It would be an understatement to say they're struggling a bit. There's a lot of work to do in a very short amount of time, and the colleges are put into a position where they're having to help a lot of school districts, and I think there are existing partnerships there, so we have some existing infrastructure to help support the development, especially of the college prep courses, but these need to be online by the fall, and we, meaning the state, really has a very limited role in that process because these are to be locally developed and implemented. We are, as much as possible, visiting local groups to listen and talk about what our understanding of the bill is and help faculty and administrators and service center personnel who are working together on these projects to help think through what are some of the big questions we have to ask in developing these courses. How this then affects higher education, as far as, if I'm sure you're aware, the college prep courses, once a student has successfully completed a college prep course, the course is designed in collaboration with a higher ed partner. The student's successful completion of that course would then be considered TSI exempt in that subject area at the participating college. So this certainly puts everyone on alert to, there's a lot at stake. We really want to make sure that students are ready when they walk in the door at that college, that they're ready to take the credit-bearing courses that, as has been set up, since we won't have that option to bring in additional remediation, and the hope, of course, is that we won't need it. But because so much is changing in the high school level, and we're going to be seeing students with different kinds of course preparation, that is certainly something we need to be doing a better job communicating with our community college partners on what is it going to look like, well, and our university partners certainly as well. What are students going to be bringing with them as they come to your door? Because that is going to look very different. And I think there has been additional uncertainty because of the State Board of Education really working through what are these different endorsements looking like. And at least at this point, really only the distinguished and the STEM endorsements will really be very prescriptive. From what it looks like, the other endorsements there's a lot more flexibility, a lot more school district decision making on that. And this is where I think our P16 councils and our existing partnerships between school districts and their colleges, there needs to be a lot of conversation about what the school districts are looking to propose. And for you all to be communicating with your school districts about what your expectations are for a student to be prepared to come in and do well at your college. I think it puts a lot of onus on us to have more and better conversations locally. And certainly we're, as much as we can, support that. But again, most of this is locally driven. I'm not sure if I'm actually answering your question. As far as the work that we're doing with the ABE, what we're now calling the TSI operational plan, because it really is something that's broader than students who are testing into ABE skill levels. We are, as Dr. Laredo mentioned, we are starting the regional meetings that we had mentioned to you last time we were here. The first one, of course, is on Monday in Amarillo College. I believe that Dr. Tomerlin has included in your packets a list of the schedule along with contact information and location times of those meetings. That information is also posted on our website. And actually, the link that is posted there, rather than that P16 after the last slash, that should be just TSI, will take you actually directly to the landing page that has this information, so you don't have to do multiple clicks. We'll have has the venues listed, the times of the meetings, as well as a link that will take you to the initial webinar we had on December 17th, I believe it was, with a small group of stakeholders to do the first vetting of the plan and get feedback. There's also a copy of the most recent version of the plan is also posted there, as well as other information about the new TSI assessment, links to webinars on that. So there's a wealth of information on the page that has the link to TSI rather than P16.
Very good. Any questions? None. I think we'll take our adjournment to lunch. And I'd like to ask the board members, Gary also dropped this off everybody's place. Hopefully during your lunch quickly you can look over that, because we're going to talk about some things having to do this, and I want this refreshed in your mind what our charge actually is. Okay, we'll adjourn to lunch and see you back here in just a few minutes. Is Roberto Zarate, who has been a friend of mine for, let's see, how many years, Roberto? Forever. Roberto has worked with education most his life, been a teacher, a principal, and everything else, right, Roberto? Yeah. He was one of the founders of CAT. We got the list of stuff, and I learned stuff about him, got the list of all the things that he had done that we got from his college, and done a lot of things I wasn't aware of, but I think most importantly for us, he's the vice chair of the Association of Community College Trustees, that's ACCT. He probably has done more work with the legislatures than any other board member in the state of Texas, I gather. He helped put together the organization of CAT, and he seemed natural when CAT was looking for a legislative person to be the one to chair our legislative group. You know, no other name came to mind to me, to be honest with you, than Roberto's. He just seemed the natural for it, and he's going to be working with the legislative committee for CAT. And Roberto?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, we've had a long-standing friendship as we've moved through this wonderful journey that community colleges are. I feel real at home here because I see a lot of friends, and I've just discovered a new friend, Ricky Watley. My family's from this part of the country, and we know some similar people, and he knows some of my family, so it's great to be here. I'm here because of Marie's urging, and I appreciate her confidence in me. And I can tell you that being the legislative chair of a trustee organization is a lot different than being the legislative chair of any other organization, because we are so scattered throughout the state. And so the issue is, how do we engage people in the process? Usually the process is the presidents bring to us a legislative agenda that's been put together by the president's organization, and we say yay or nay, and then that's the end of it. And then we don't say anything until after the fact or after the session is over, and then we get to deal with what the legislature has deemed to be important for the state. In other words, we have to pick up the costs that they've imposed on us. And so one of the biggest needs, again, is to get student trustees involved in a meaningful way in that process. And so in several discussions prior to this meeting, we had decided to develop a committee that would work at that trustee engagement in a meaningful way. The other important part is collaboration with the presidents, and we've sat back and let the presidents take the lead in this, even though they don't have the political clout that trustees do, and the political connections that we do. And I think that they needed the support. And so, again, this is the issue, or one of the agendas that we have, is to provide the presidents with that political support that they may need to get some of these wonderful ideas that they have developed by the legislative process. So, Jonette McCowan from McLennan is the legislative chair for the the presidents. And she and I have been communicating through email in terms of trying to make sure that we're in step in terms of what we're thinking. So I think that collaboration is going to be essential as we get toward developing a plan for the legislative session. And because I've been at this a while, this is my 10th year, or I'm in the middle of my 11th year as a trustee in San Antonio. I've gotten to know a lot of people in the state. And so when we put together our committee, it was very easy to do because I have a lot of really neat, interesting friends throughout the state. And so let me just give you an idea of who's on the committee. Our first person is Dr. Carmen Graham from the El Paso Community System. She's also been a longstanding trustee and has just been very, very interested in diversity and programming, as you can tell by the kind of support she's given our president. Trey McCampbell is the chair at Del Mar College in Corpus Christi, and Trey has just been remarkable in terms of being consistently an advocate for community colleges. Raymond Lewis, George, you know him well, from Galveston, is also on the committee, and Raymond is a voice of reason. He's quiet, but boy, he can get things conceptualized in a very concise way. One of our newest colleges, Texas Southmost College, has a new chair, and that's Francisco Rendon. And as you know, they're going through trying to separate from UT Brownsville, but he is also very dynamic. He's a businessman in that area, and also is a very strong advocate for community colleges. Conrad Heed from Tarrant County is also a trustee. He's a realtor, and he is also an incredible friend of mine, and also very, very enraptured with what community colleges do and how they serve their community. David Summer is a trustee from Blinn College, and as you all know, Blinn College is one of the flagships of community colleges in the state. And they've got a very dynamic board and some very exciting programs and a lot of great partnerships with A&M, and obviously well politically connected, so that might help us out that way. And then there's Don Nicholson, who's the chair of Amarillo College. He is a very exciting young man, and also is very connected to Senator Selger from that area, and so that'll help us tremendously. So I feel that this committee is representative not only of the membership of CAT, but also is geographically appropriate in terms of all regions of the state being included. And so we're real excited about being that committee. Now, we've only had one meeting. I'll be frank with you. We haven't had much. And so we met at the Star Awards ceremony that we had here, sponsored by the coordinating board, had a brief meeting and had some discussions in terms of items that we think are important. And so I'm going to give you some of those in a few minutes. But the trustees have a difficulty getting to places to meet to have these meetings because we're constrained by budget, unlike the presidents. And so what we try to do is we try to meet at every meeting that we're sanctioned that we can attend. And so that's why we met there. Now, our next meeting is going to be at the NLS in Washington, D.C., and that's sponsored by ACCT. And Jen Phelps is our our state person here is coordinating some meetings there. We will probably meet again as a committee sometime within the NLS, probably before we have our Texas breakfast, and further refine the agenda or look at any new items that need to be considered. So, in that November meeting, one of the first things we discussed was unfunded mandates. And the reason we did that is because we are realists in terms of what's happening with the legislature. We know the money's not there, or it's not going to be there in the amounts we think is important to us. But if it's not there, then we need to look at unfunded mandates and the impact they have on our systems. And so I think Jen is running a study of that to see what the impact. I can tell you at Alamo we have about $11 million of unfunded mandates that we absorb every year. And that's substantial in the budget, even in a budget as large as ours. The next thing we looked at was statewide articulation agreements. There are states out there that have a statewide articulation agreements that are benefiting from them, and this doesn't cost any money. It's just a matter of structural changes coming out of the legislature. The other item is, from that can flow things like a common course a numbering system. We forwarded a bill to the last legislative session about that. And the reason or the rationale behind that is that a lot of our kids transfer, and sometimes the courses are not accepted, which adds more cost. If you look at the cost of tuition for a community college student versus one at a four-year institution, there's really no comparison. It's so high. But if a student has to retake courses once they go into a four-year institution, it's an economic burden on those families. And also it is a detractor to our program because if our courses are not accepted, then our credibility is pretty much at peril there. The other thing is we're like everybody else up in the air in terms of House Bill 5, what impact it's going to have on community colleges and on our budgets. And so we discussed about what would it mean for a trustee. What would come to us to deliberate upon, and that is capital costs. There are going to be some capital costs involved in this to some degree as we partner with schools. At least we've anticipated that. It may not. However, that may be an item that we may ask some relief from the legislature. And again, we've got a while to make those deliberations. But that's one item. Another item that was brought up was the success points not being part of the accountability system for the performance funding. And so I think you noticed in that schematic they have on the very far right, there's a little area that says workforce development or something, and there's nothing assigned to it. But we're very heavily invested in that, and that's one of our most successful areas. So that was brought up. The other area is dual credit. Dual credit has a lot of different applications in the state, going from the early college, high school, which is a marvelous reform model, I think, for Texas public schools. But, for example, in San Antonio, we charge nothing for dual credit. We absorb all the costs. It's one of the greatest tuition programs, scholarship programs, at least in our area. Others, like Austin's, charge a nominal fee of about $40, something like that. And it's not, we're struggling. We've looked at, for example, in Alamo, that in about 3 years we may have to start charging. We have no choice because of costs and so on. And so if this is something that's an expectation at state level, there should be some funding revenue coming for that because it is a very successful and proven program. It's not like something that we just imagined. It's already gone to scale. It's something that a lot of our families are benefiting from, and it's something that really we can look at, and it doesn't take a massive investment of funds from the state. It would mean to reasonably look at this, what would be the return on investment? So we're discussing that. So what is the strategy? Of course, is to build a plan. Marie calls me about every 2 days, and I don't like it when she calls on Tuesday because that's when I do my ironing. I'm retired and I have a schedule, and so and we have about an hour discussion on some of these things. But we do need to get together on a phone conference with the other trustees before Washington, and we're going to do that. We're going to hopefully have a more solidified understanding of what we're going to do by the time we get to the Texas breakfast, and we'll make a report there in Washington, D.C., and if not, we'll immediately after that meeting send out something to trustees throughout the state about what was discussed and other items that come up there. The other thing is to develop relationships with legislators. One of the things that I've enjoyed very much has been serving on various committees here at the coordinating board, and Dr. Paredes is probably tired of seeing me around here, but it's a very important thing to develop relationships so that you have trust in terms of what your intent is and what you expect. I can tell you today I'm very excited about a new appointment for myself, as if I needed more to do, but I'm going to join Dr. Paredes on the Texas 2036 Commission. And that commission is to look at goals for the state up to the year 2036, even though at the Council for Continuous Improvement and Innovation that's here at the coordinating board, we're doing the same work. So, Commissioner, I think we're going to have to talk about how that's all going to come together. And I think we've had that discussion before in that council. The important part of that appointment is that the House chairs, the House chair and the Senate chair are going to be part of that commission as well. And so we're going to work real hard at developing a good relationship with them so they can get an understanding of the vital role that community colleges play in the state. I don't think any plan, whether it comes out of the coordinating board or from the legislature, can succeed without the significant involvement and investment in community colleges. And so I've become very, very convinced of that because, again, if you've looked at the data, the majority of the enrollment in this state is in community colleges. You can't get any certificates unless you come out of community colleges. So there is that's a very important understanding to have as we move forward during this agenda. And then after we get the plan put together and hopefully have these relationships in place, we need to get as many trustees engaged in this as possible, because it's just not enough to say yes to a plan that's brought before you, but to have a real understanding of how it's going to impact on your communities. And so, Madam Chair, this is the charge you gave me and the committee, and we're trying very hard to get there. And I can tell you that after, in the next few weeks, after we get back from Washington, D.C., if we get back from Washington, D.C. on time, it's usually bad weather out there, we'll have more of a concise plan for you. And now I'm open for questions.
You know, one of the things that I believe is that this committee needs to work with both TAC and CAT. You know, we don't need to be on opposite sides of issues, et cetera, so we need a lot of communication between us and working together. And congratulations on your appointment. And I think to me, Roberto and I have been talking that things are just aligning, I think, for the community colleges to be working much better with the co-board, with the state, and with everybody. And I think your appointment is just one more big step in that direction, Roberto. So congratulations.
Thank you.
We did not ask the TAC legislative chair to talk to us yet because they've not had a meeting yet. So
I understand.
That's why we asked you and did not ask your counterpart yet. But does anybody have any questions or any comments on any of this? George?
Roberto, you may have mentioned this and I missed it. How many of our community colleges are members of CAT now?
I think all of them are. With the restructuring we did last year or the year before, they're all members.
Great.
And I want to talk about that. I don't know why you asked the question, George. When we were, before we reached this agreement with TAC, we had about 26, 27 members, but we represented the majority of the enrollment in Texas. It's the same thing with ACCT. Not all colleges are members of ACCT. I think only like about 28 or 29 colleges are. The point, though, is advocacy. How are we going to advocate for community colleges from the political perspective, which is you and I are involved in that. So, again, if you do get that question, we're all members.
Yes, sir.
Could you talk a little bit more about the dual credit and what the goal is there in terms of funding?
Well, as you know, Greg, when you get involved in dual credit, there are costs. And so we've been absorbing the cost primarily, and it is an expectation of the state. And if so, you know, at what point do we does it become financially untenable? Not untenable, but I mean, we start absorbing a hit. And again, in looking at our financials in Alamo, we're right now absorbing about $300,000 of costs that are not being reimbursed. And so again, that's fine. I mean, we can absorb those costs, we can make it happen. But I think if it's an expectation of the state, there needs to be support. And so we'll get busy with the presidents to find out what that means. And again, it's a variety of implementations throughout the state. And that causes us problems when we advocate before the legislature, because if we're giving it away, basically, we're not providing any costs, and somebody else is having to charge $120 a student, the first question the legislature is going to have is, well, why are they giving it away and you're not? And so, again, depending on the size of the organization, the tax base, you have more options, obviously, and so you can absorb things. But when your tax base gets down to like a Ranger, for example, you have very few options. And so, again, if it's a state expectation, I think the state needs to look at that and they need to provide support.
I agree. I did want to comment on that. I know that at Panola College we do not discount dual credit enrollment, and fortunately, 3 of the 4 counties that we serve, the ISDs, actually pay the tuition for the students. And I do get questions because we have community colleges that are close to us that offer it for free or significantly discounted. But when Carthage Independent School District, for example, although they're just across the street, they actually bus their students over to the main campus, to our campus, and they're integrated into the regular classroom. And if we have someone sitting in that history class and we're giving it to them for free, there is a cost, and it means that the other people who are paying in that to take that class are having to pay a higher tuition rate in order to offer it free to the other students. So I'm glad you're tackling this.
Well, and again, the issue is how do we quantify the cost? You know, with so many disparate implementations, how do we quantify the cost? And I think that's something we're going to have to look at. And it may not happen this legislative session, but this is something that was brought up by this committee. So they're on target. I mean, that is an item that needs to be looked at.
Gary, I was wondering, would you mind researching a little bit for us? I think that at one time, the state was putting some money in for the dual credit. At least this is what the Pasadena Independent School District superintendent told me, because just before they really started working with Sanjak the year before, then he said the funding was cut off. Can y'all just research and see what the deal is on that? Or does somebody
I don't remember that.
There was an amount that was given to the ISDs that was discretionary, and I believe that it was $175 per student, but it was not specified for dual credit. It could be used for any purpose that the ISD believed was worthwhile, whether that was hiring another counselor or what have you. And a number of schools, a number of ISDs did choose to use that $175 supplement for dual credit, and I don't believe that they're receiving that.
But you don't think that it, no, and he said whatever it was, the money they were getting stopped the year before they started working with the...
But the state does reimburse the community colleges for the courses as they would any course. And in fact, if it's truly dual credit, school districts get money through the regular daily count. I've forgotten what they call it.
Yeah.
ADA for that. So the difference is some community colleges have chosen not to charge tuition. That's a differentiation. And this other fund you're talking about is exactly right, and that's totally at the school district's discretion. And it wasn't. I'd never heard that it was specifically intended for that, but they can use it however they choose to.
But David, the difference over the past 10-year period is that the formula funding at one time was much more significant than it is now. And you know, our number one source of revenue is tuition today, and many of us are tuition dependent.
That's true, and that's the issue, whether it's dual credit or somebody who's on your campus. I mean, that is a significant question, regardless of whether it's on campus, if it's their third year on campus, whether it's CTE, whether it's transfer. That's right, and that's because of the large expansion. But
Dr. Gardner, one of the things that we're discussing, though, this is a proven program. I mean, it's really, it has benefits not only for the parents, but it also has benefits in terms of completion and other items that we're pushing for on the student success agenda. We do need support. And we do get reimbursement on tuition, but it's like you said, it's like everything else. You submit for $100 and you get back 20. So, I mean, the costs are there. I mean, and for San Antonio, it's kind of easy. We have these huge high schools, and the urban areas is fine. But if you've got other smaller areas where you have to bring in students from other areas, I know we have a center in Kerrville, and they have to deal with Bandera, Ingram, and some other little communities outlying. So there are a lot of issues to discuss. The point, though, is if it's got such a high return, isn't it something that we need to support? And if so, then we as trustees need to say that to the legislature and see if we can get some relief there. And if we don't get any relief, then at least we know what we have to do as trustees. Roberto, because the onus is on us anyway.
You guys need to, and come to your own conclusion, look at this so you'll know the full picture, because there have been people who are arguing, we have not. But because the school districts actually get funding for the course, the community colleges get funding for the course. There's actually more funding for each of these courses than for anything else. Now, I think that you have clearly the big issue is you're not getting the adequate funding for any of your courses. But I think when you fashion your argument, you have to be aware that some people have viewed this as now the community colleges don't receive that funding that goes to the school districts, but that money's there, and you just need to make sure you shape your
and we're aware of that,
understanding that.
We're aware of that, Dr. Gardner, because I know that double dipping issue was there in previous legislative sessions. There's also the issue of rigor. I mean, there's always been a battle at the high school level between AP and dual credit, which is the best one. We have it in San Antonio with some of our more elite high schools. And so, I mean, there are a lot of issues there. But again, to centralize the approach we're going to take is this support? Is there support needed by the state? And if there is, what does that support look like, and how we're going to quantify it? And if, in fact, if this becomes a priority, fine, then we'll push for it. If it's not a priority, then we won't push for it. Again, these are just the preliminary discussions.
Just on, if I could say one thing about the rigor issue that has come up and I think has caused some misunderstanding is, I recall a school teacher once said that a dual credit course wasn't rigorous enough that was being offered by a community college. And if you looked at it, the real issue was not rigor. It was whether the course was covering all the material that was required for the high school course. And that's a real challenge for the community colleges to have a course that meets all of those high school requirements and at the same time meets all the requirements you would have. And some people have suggested that it might be good to have a cross-listing so you could just offer your course directly and not really have to worry about offering those high school requirements in the course. So, but that's a challenge, and at least the number of anecdotes I've heard, I don't think it really reflected at all on the rigor of what the community college was doing. It had to do with how you meet these two challenges, is to cover everything that's required by TEIA in the equivalent high school course, but at the same time it's a college course and you're trying to do the other, and it can be hard to do both. And so at least those instances where our staff has looked at some of these things, it's not been what the community college was doing, but them having to deal with essentially two goals simultaneously in some cases. Some courses it's not as much of a challenge.
And Dr. Gardner, you have fountain of knowledge and wealth of information there. For trustees, though, when you sit down at that podium on Tuesday nights or on Thursdays, whenever you have your meetings, you don't have that data. All you know is that you go to a legislative hearing and there's a real brouhaha about the rigor. I'm glad you're there to provide that service. And I think to give the coordinating board a pat on the back, Dr. Paredes, the establishment of this group is going to go a long way in taking care of that, getting that information to trustees who basically are not as engaged as all of the trustees that are on this panel. It's very important to understand what's going on so that you can make some sound decisions at the local level. But at statewide level, these are the obstacles we've had to face before. And all I'm just saying is that, again, we're mindful of them, and we're going to do the best we can to frame them in a way that I think will help us with the legislature. I think one of the biggest positives that came out of the last legislative session was their feeling that we were all working together on this finally for a change, that there weren't any differences between the presidents or the trustees. I think that was very, very positive. And so we want to maintain that momentum.
Mimi?
Yeah, Roberto, I appreciate you talking about some of the priorities, and in respect to dual credit, because I've been around a long time and have seen this come up and go down and come up and come down as a legislative topic, I just have a word of caution, and I think it kind of echoes some of the sentiments Dr. Gardner was presenting, is that it's, at the end of the day, for most colleges, it's become a business decision on whether they charge tuition or not. So when you do your data collection, you will probably find that the medium and smaller colleges charge full tuition. The larger districts do not. It's probably some of the same rationale that went into the different distribution model that we were able to implement this last session on core operations. So my guidance would be that when we approach it, we not talk about it in terms of contact hour funding, because we receive that even though it's greatly diminished, but if there could be some tuition assistance for dual credit students, that might be a way to appropriately address it where it would not cause difficulty for the member institutions.
And we're not in the business of doing that, first of all. The thing that we really want to look at is, again, this was just a discussion, preliminary discussion. As we get deeper into this, we'll listen to the advice, because we're going to work with the presidents on this. The point, though, remains it is an issue, and we do need to discuss it, and we need to get it on the table. Now, if it doesn't rise to the level of legislative action, fine. However, at least we will have an idea of where we need to go. Now, going back to your discussion about size of systems, I've always been worried about the rural colleges, the smaller colleges, because they don't have the resources that, for example, an urban system does, like ours. And so their implementations are very much different than ours. And they, again, we need to be mindful of that. And I think the $1 million core appropriation this last time was wonderful. I think that they needed that, and I think the larger systems understood why. And I think in this case, we want to look at that same model in any request we make, so that differentiation between the size of systems is provided for.
Yes, sir.
And this is probably a Susan Brown question, but I'd be curious to know the breakdown on dual credit between academic courses and the career and technical courses. In our case at Panola College, we have seen the most growth in the career and technical colleges. The local or the area high schools love the fact that the students are getting into electrical programs, instrumentation, petroleum technology, because those students are graduating and earning really good salaries. And there's also a lot of rigor there. And our petroleum program, our advisory committee, insisted that college algebra be one of the courses as part of that degree. But we've had a lot of growth, and those are expensive programs. I was a little taken aback when earlier this year when I was told that we needed an additional, to accommodate the interest in our electrical instrumentation, we needed another 12 trainers at the cost of $300,000 apiece. It's tough to not charge tuition when you have that sort of outlay, capital outlay.
Very good. Any other questions? Well, Roberto, again, congratulations on your appointment, and thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll be hearing from you in the near future.
If you're still chair, yes, ma'am, I'm sure you will. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for inviting me today, and I wish you the best with this committee. And I think as we finalize the agenda, a lot of the input that you provided today will be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Linda Battles, Associate Commissioner, is going to give us an update on the negotiated rulemaking and discuss areas we are in the process of developing rules. We've been talking about this since our first meeting, haven't we?
So I'm going to give you an update on where we're at on negotiated rulemaking for Texas Educational Opportunity Grant Program, which, as you know, is the state's need-based financial aid program for students enrolled at community colleges. And then give you a heads up on another negotiated rulemaking committee that we're going to be developing to talk about the Texas Success Initiative, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, who's going to actually talk to you about what the issue is that that committee wants to address. First of all, back in December, we began the convening phase of negotiated rulemaking through Lori Frederick, who is our convener, and she submitted letters to all of you, to the presidents, asking for nominations of either the presidents themselves participating on this committee or a designee from their campus. And we received a total of 18 nominations. So what I'm going to do as the Alternative Dispute Resolution Coordinator, I'm in charge of identifying the members. So I'm going to go ahead and appoint all of those who were nominated to serve on the committee. We usually don't want to go over 25 members, so we still have some room to grow if need be. But we're going to go ahead and appoint all 18 nominees to the committee. And on January 15th, I'll be submitting a notice of intent with the Texas Register with the list of those individuals. One individual is actually in this room right now, and that's Steve Johnson, to represent the Texas Association of Community Colleges. The issue that they will be discussing is Senate Bill 215, which is the Coordinating Board Sunset Bill, requires us to develop rules for the allocation methodology for our financial aid programs and other trusteed funds. So we have done that process with a couple of other financial aid programs in the fall, namely the Texas Education Grant Program, Tuition Equalization Grant Program for private institutions, the Beyond Time program, the portion of the funds that go to private institutions. And we're still working on college work study. We have a meeting coming up here in February to continue that work. So as soon as the notice of intent is published with the Texas Register with the names of the 18 committee members for TEOG, it'll be up for 10 days for public comment. And at that time, stakeholders will have their last opportunity to recommend somebody to serve on the committee. Again, trying to stay within the 25 maximum. Once you get beyond 25, it's a little difficult to gain consensus on a particular rule. So that's sort of the rule of thumb. In terms of the new TSI issue that we're going to be undertaking through the negotiated rulemaking process, next week we will begin that convening phase where Lori Frederick will submit to all the stakeholders a letter soliciting nominations for individuals to serve on that committee. And we will try to have a timeline to where we can ultimately go to our board with rules that were developed through this process and all stakeholders agreed to unanimously or through consensus by July. If that doesn't happen, obviously we're going to have to extend that timeline, but that is our goal. And we'll be following the same process again that I just explained for TEOG. Hopefully start identifying the committee members by late January and trying to, we still have to do a 10-day comment period for that list as well. So hopefully start meetings in late February on this issue. So I want to, unless there's any questions for me, I want to turn it over to Kristen to talk about what the issue is related to TSI.
Thank you, Linda. And you'll have to bear with me because it is a bit complicated, and I may look to the commissioner to help me explain it. The issue at hand is one that has emerged out of a pilot project the new Mathways project, which I think many of you are aware of. It is a collaborative project that between the Dana Center and many, I guess TAC is one of the members, as well as many participating community colleges, in developing a new pathway from DevEd into math courses. This pathway is different from what has typically been the course where a student takes a developmental math course that would prepare them for any entry-level college course in mathematics, typically college algebra being that focused course. The new Mathways project is developing a developmental ed sequence that would prepare a student to succeed in a statistics course or a math foundations course. I believe it's called contemporary math, excuse me. So rather than the college algebra course. So the DevEd sequence would not prepare the student for college algebra. So the confusion arises, or the potential for concern arises, because it means that a student may well be college ready, but for statistics and contemporary math, not algebra. So it has a little asterisk next to the designation of college readiness. And the participating colleges are concerned that we don't have a mechanism for doing that, either in our reporting or, any mechanism for that. Also, this has implications, of course, for transfer, because if you recall, TSI statute and rule establishes that once a student is deemed ready to take entry-level credit-bearing courses in a subject area, in a content area, by a particular college, then that designation must be honored by all other public higher ed institutions in Texas. So this allows for seamless transfer once a student has been designated college ready. Now, if a particular college if a student has come through, say, the Mathways project program, and is eligible for taking a statistics course, but then transfers to another institution, that institution may not be aware that the student's preparation is really more geared towards a statistical pathway versus, say, college algebra. So the question is, how do we help facilitate that? How do we design that designation and communicate it and provide opportunities for transfer? This has real implications, obviously, for policy and for our rules. So this is the question that we're going to be taking to the negotiated rulemaking. I'll let David be more specific.
I just want to add a little nuance to what Kristen just said, is that what we heard when we talked to some folks is that should that student, so you do have the ability to through our holistic advising, to declare them college ready, but should the student, even at the same school, decide to go into an area that may require the more rigorous math, we were told they wanted some way to sort of put them back in the queue again after they were declared college ready. And there really is not a way to do that. It doesn't fit within the rules. And so there's a transfer issue. So once they've been declared college ready, they're college ready under the current rules. And it can be done through the Mathways, but there isn't this other sort of this twist, which I don't know what percent of the students might want to do that. I don't imagine it would be high, but there was a desire, as I understand it, to make that happen.
True.
So it's not just the transfer, it's even within the same institution was what was raised to us. So
Yes.
if you approach how we're going to address this.
Yep. But again, what it comes down to is that there's a different definition of college readiness in math. So it would be establishing two different definitions and the implications of those definitions, what the student is prepared for. And again, as Dr. Gardner just pointed out, if a student should decide to change into a different track, would they then be eligible? Would the institution be able to send the student back for more preparation to prepare them for that track? And at this point, our rules don't allow that. So So there are some complex issues on the table, and I'm sure you all understand why we want to be bringing that to the colleges and universities to discuss.
To tell, we are going forward with negotiated rulemaking. Have you mentioned that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's.
Sorry. I mentioned that earlier. You were out of the room, David.
Well, I didn't know that she had, and so I just want to make. We think this is a great process, a great use of negotiated rulemaking.
Yeah,
so
I was
everybody
just
down at the table and work this out together. And I sent the letter out to Uri yesterday, explaining that we were going to start this process right away to get this resolved for you.
Will the Dana Center be involved?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Any other questions on it? Mimi, I think you had the most to start off with. Are you?
No, I was primarily interested in an update in how it's being approached, so I appreciate the information.
Okay, thank you, guys. Next, we're going to have the discussion on the council charge and the future agenda items. You all looked over, I think, our charge to kind of refresh you on it. Gary had put it on the table here. One thing that I'd like to just go around the table, we'll probably, let's start down at this end. And Jeremy, can you just kind of tell us what direction you think we need to go now, or what you want to see from this?
I think we're making progress here in terms of coming together and where we want to go. I appreciated the opportunity to have conversation about the charge again as we look at this. Unfortunately, I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I didn't benefit from any discussion that occurred then. I do appreciate the discussion of substantive issues related to dual credit and really issues that we face on a daily basis, and how we fund this going forward. There are things we've been talking about today with adult basic education, TSI, and all those that really have the potential to shape the future of the mission of the community college. And so if you look at item 2 here, it talks about reinforcing the distinctive mission of the community college. If we shape differently how students get to us or don't get to us, that has a dramatic impact. And so I'm glad to have the opportunity to share those things. I'm not real sure how that comes out as we go through the legislative process. I'm not real sure how the interplay works with TAC and CAT and so on. So I'd like to see more clarity on those issues from the group as we discuss that today.
Okay, I will tell you, I get impatient, and I do want, I want us to hear from CAT and TAC, and I think Roberto working with CAT's going to be a good thing, and I think he and the chair for the presidents have a good relationship, so hopefully we'll get that combined going. But and I see it, and you may disagree, and I want to hear everybody's idea. I see that we need to at least work together with those organizations, but our role may be a little different with the coordinating board. In talking with the commissioner we met recently, I think that, ours probably maybe is more of a leadership role while still supportive. Is that what you're?
What we're calling this group
leadership, so I guess it should be, okay. Okay, this part has been the hardest for me, is just getting a handle on it. I think the charge and the one that approved, and I really appreciate, and they're not here, the gentleman that we worked with on getting them through what the charge is as outlined now, I think was a big step in the right direction, and it just took us a little while to get there, but I think that to me, we've got a stronger base now than what we had before. But okay, Rex, tell me your thoughts.
Well, it's kind of like the 12 blind men looking at the elephant. Everybody gets a different piece of it from where you come from. I was glad that William shared with us what they're doing at El Paso, for example. In my own mind, I'm not really sure what all the Higher Education Coordinating Board knows about what's going on at the community college. I think this gives us an opportunity to at least up so that we can formulate some kind of cohesive plan for the next session of the legislature. I think that's the key. The key is funding. Don't get our squeaky wheel greased at the legislative level, then we're always going to be out there saying, oh, gee whiz, I wish I had done different. I think pulling together and each of us understanding where the other person is in this rowboat, it may be helpful. I think what William did today is important, and I think would probably be best if all of us had the opportunity to do that from our perspective, from where we stand at our colleges, because we're all different. None of us are the same. Can't say that for the flagship universities because they're pretty much mirror images of each other, but community colleges are not.
That's because they represent their communities, and our communities are all different.
Population, and there's different screaming out there to put money in this program because the local businesses are saying we want this. I don't know how much y'all know about that, Amy, but I think you do know that in our town we have the #1 employer in the state of Texas. We hire more people than anybody, all of you together. One business. It's called Fort Hood. But our different there is that we're educating soldiers for the most part, or soldiers' families. That's a different thing because they move. And you get them in class, you teach them something, and well, our success point is graduation rate. Next semester, they're at a different Camp Postal Station. We don't get a chance to be in their hand. They may get one, but it may be a completely different system where they get it. Transferability of credits and standardization of classes and getting those kinds of issues are something that I think is important for this committee to understand. And as I read our charter, that's what we need to look at.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Let me respond to a couple of things that you've said. I think we know a great deal about community colleges at the coordinating board, and we know that we never know enough, and so we're trying to improve our knowledge of community colleges. I can tell you for myself, we're in the process of scheduling a number of visits to community colleges. I've already visited several in the past few months. We will schedule a series of visits between now and, for the rest of the calendar year. I now have a regularly scheduled call with Chancellor Richard Carpenter, who's the chair of TACC this year. We obviously are learning through the establishment of this leadership council. We work closely with a number of presidents directly, so we're doing about as much as we can to make sure that we're well informed about what community colleges are different. I can also tell you that universities are just as diverse as community colleges are. They're not homogeneous at all. But of course we know about local workforce demands on community colleges. We work very closely with the Texas Workforce Commission. We know what kinds of economic pressures exist in different communities and how different communities have different employment needs and workforce goals. So we're trying to stay on top of all of those issues. I don't pretend that we're doing as well as we should, but we are familiar with community colleges. We just hired somebody as head of one of our divisions, and one of his strongest qualities was his community college background. That's Rex Peoples, whom you've already been introduced to.
Hey, I'd like to add, you just heard today about all the visits that are going to be made, the regional meetings for the TSI operational plan. There are many visits at the staff level. The Carl Perkins, we have visits. We haven't been enough, but we probably are on more community college campuses easily than universities just for a number of reasons. Rex is going to attend some of the meetings on a TSI operational plan just to visit in other ways. So one of our realities is, we've got 50 community college districts, we've got 38 universities, we've got other areas of responsibility, and we don't even have half that number of staff members to do this. That there also need to be here to review all your proposals that come in, and so we make those efforts. I think we've added all these additional efforts that the commissioner was talking about, but I can tell you that I frequently, people will go out to a community college for some specific purpose, and they learn about something else that we need to address, and that's brought up by one of the administrators or faculty or presidents that we thought, okay, here's something where we've got a glitch in what we're doing. So that doesn't make headlines, but it's something we discuss when we come back, and I think it does make a difference. Rex and Gary are very knowledgeable, and I think they bring nuances to the table that even with what we've done before, I think we understand some things better than we did before. But I don't want to ignore the I don't know how many proposals we approve every year from community colleges, and each one of those involves discussions with the schools involved at some level and review of what's going on. So we'll never know perfectly, and we need to know harder. And I think the addition of the community college liaisons has helped. And Mimi was involved in that suggestion with Bill Holda, and we think that's very helpful. Even just the annual visit where we sit down and spend a whole day together is very helpful. At some level, you can never know enough. But we are trying to work hard on that.
Nita.
Well, I feel like I'm a little, I still have a lot to learn. Most of you are presidents, and y'all know the ins and outs of every day running the college. But I'm very proud of our Southwest Texas Junior College with Dr. Hector Gonzalez right now, who is in our a good leader. He has a lot of foresight and is moving us forward. I agree with the today. It seems like the discussion has been I liked William's program or his show of his programs in El Paso. We're also the top 10%, in the nation with our college down there, and we are a rural county, a rural situation. We serve about 11 counties, and only 3 are in the district that pay the taxes. And anyway, but I was going to mention, today's subject seems to be the early college program, and I like to see that in the high school around our area. We have a little bit of a reduction in our enrollment because of the Eagle Ford oil industry that's going on, so we're losing some of our enrollment there. And anyway, but I like the idea of serving on this board. I'm learning a lot from all of you, and I just really appreciate the fact that we are trying to develop a partnership with the high schools and the community colleges, and then the transfer, all of that. And anyway, I'm not as articulate as the rest of you, but I didn't. Did we do an update on the ABE that was on? Is that coming up?
No, she
you remember
that.
We had that discussion about, okay,
that
I may have
was just
missed
before
that.
lunch.
Okay, all right. And we welcome y'all to come visit us anytime. And one of the things, too, that I've kind of found I didn't realize was that like 70% of our student body are on student aid, and Hispanics. So I just wanted to mention that. statistic.
Very good, thank you. Mike?
Are you seeking open comments?
I'm seeking open comments having to do with the task we have ahead of us and how we achieve it.
The big question I have is, in terms of collaborative relationships, is that a rather open topic, meaning that... Sorry. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, let me start again. Regarding item number 1, in terms of building relationships, I love this topic. I think business is achieved through building relationships. Are we talking about among ourselves? Are we talking about external stakeholders? Are we talking about, what do we mean by that?
In my opinion, and there's probably others, and Commissioner, I ask you also, but I think we want a collaborative relationship between the community colleges and the coordinating board, better than what it has been. And I think, frankly, that this is going to be the easiest thing to get put away, because I think it's already started working. I think we've got a better understanding. The staff, et cetera, the commissioner, people are listening to what we're saying. We need to also listen to what they're saying, and I think that process is got a good basis for going. We're learning different things about each other. Like the commissioner said, we can never know enough. But I think that process, at least, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think we've at least started that in a good direction, right? Okay. Commissioner,
Thank you.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I would think that the idea of collaboration reaches out to all the various individuals, organizations, members of the legislature, state officials, who can help, first of all, improve understanding of the work of two-year institutions, can better support the work of two-year institutions, and ideally improve the resources for two-year institutions. So I think it's not only the relationship between two-year institutions and the coordinating board, it's providing leadership in how to move the agenda of two-year institutions forward across the state with all potential constituents or stakeholders.
I bow to your definition.
I'd like to applaud that. I can tell you, I think there is really rich opportunity for us to once we get our basis down, is to then turn out and begin to reach out to those other stakeholders, because I think there's rich opportunity there for us to restake the territory that two-year colleges have in the state economy. And we may be able to improve, for example, on a statewide level, the dialogue we have with the industrial employers that hire a lot of our graduates, for example. The legislative situation, I think we're making progress there, and so I'd like to suggest that once we get our basis down, that we consider the notion of, at the risk of proposing mission creep, looking beyond ourselves to make sure that we've got our place at the table when it comes to all of the various constituents and stakeholders.
I don't think, for example, I think we can do a lot to strengthen cooperation between 2- and 4-year institutions. And there's a lot of work to be done in that area. There's a lot of interest in transfer issues. There's a lot of interest, obviously, the question of whether community colleges will increase their activity in terms of offering baccalaureate degrees is of great interest to universities. So that's not only an opportunity, but it's essential that we engage 4-year universities around that issue. So there are a lot of things that we need to work on beyond collaborations between the coordinating board and 2 years.
Well, you know, I look back, and Roberto's probably the one that can appreciate this most, where Kat was 2 years ago. Roberto and I were not having nice conversations between us. we were trying to develop a relationship with TAC, and should we not? And I think it's really necessary, and I think it's good, and I know Roberto agrees. We're in a good place right now to where we're working together. And frankly, CAT and TAC did not work together well at all, okay? And I won't say everything's perfect now, but at least we've come a long way. And I think the fact that we worked together, CAT and TAC, helped us and helped TAC in the last legislative process. And to me, this is another big giant step where we're not in just working CAT and TAC together hand in hand, but working with the coordinating board. You know, if we're all together on the same page doing what's right for the students of this state, we're going to get a lot more from the legislature than we are not working together or working independently on different things. And I think that part I have a lot of hope for. Mimi.
Looking at the charge, and I'm looking down to item number 3. And maybe this is, I don't know if this is related to that specific item. It could be anywhere in there. But one thing that I think would be of interest is if there was a way to look at and maybe identify some of the top 3 needs within the state for specifically trained people, whether it be in nursing or whether it be teacher education or whatever it may be based on data, that we could do a little bit deeper dive on what our capacity is versus just how many more students in general in a particular area. I think that would be rich dialogue for a leadership council to get involved in. Because then if we are talking about building seamless relationships, it would be how do we, as a state, address those issues through all of the entities that have a share in being part of the solution, rather than looking at it in silos.
I'm glad you said that, because part of what we're going to get out of the analysis for 14 is that exact type of analysis. We've also asked, and then the other bill that's being addressed asks about that in a broader direction. And we've also asked Rand to develop for us a model so that we can continue to do that analysis without them in place. So, sorry, I don't know. I think, is that me?
No, that's you. Let me take care of it for you.
I apologize. They traded out my iPad. It has new sounds. I'm sorry. But I think we've talked a lot internally. We're going to be working much more on workforce. If you've seen at least the starting point for the next planning committee, you saw that goal in terms of workforce alignment. And I think working with you, we need to, I think, find a better way to, once we have all that, having information isn't enough. You have got to talk about it and work together. So we would appreciate some suggestions of how to take the real data we'll have in terms of those gaps and what to do with the next step with them and how to better share those and have people working together. So that would be really helpful for some further suggestions.
George.
I want to echo what Rex had to say over there about the diversity of our community colleges and the fact that we're all different. We have had some fantastic presentations and discussions concerning early college, high school, about dealing with what I would consider the more traditional student coming up from high school. I'm not sure that we've covered enough about the various challenges we have of the non-traditional student who comes in 5 years later, 10 years later, and whose success is defined in a much broader time frame. And I'm not sure that we've had the opportunity to really discuss that so that you, from the coordinating board, can gain more insight into that particular challenge that we face in all of our communities. And then as we try to build consensus on a program to go to the legislature with, how does that particular need get incorporated into that plan and incorporated into recognizing the fact that we have that challenge and that maybe there needs to be some consideration of it as we consider the formula funding portion that is tied to success of the students. I mean, what is successful what is success to a student who comes direct to us from high school and goes on to a four-year university or into a job or gets an associate's degree or certificate might be different. And I don't say I have the answer. It's a question more. Is there a learning curve that we as a group and also the coordinating board as a group needs to have in order to be able to totally understand how that's going to affect our collaboration and our work together, but also affect the legislative agenda that will come out of CAT and TAC.
Could I suggest we actually have a session at not the next meeting, maybe the one following, because we know a lot about that. And I think it's important that you know what we know, but there may be things we don't know that we'd like to hear. But the success points, actually, it doesn't matter if the student's taken 35 years to graduate. Once they reach those success points, it's not a 3-year rate or a 6-year rate. It's just, or do you graduate? So that's reflected in what, in the transfer. That's reflected in what the association helped modify for the program as it exists. So we probably need to make sure that's better known. But we have examined this. In fact, you would have been happy when Raymond and I were at RAND when people were talking about non-traditional students. I think, I may be overstating for Raymond, we ought to talk about those non-traditional students as the students. And the other students are the non-traditional now. And so we do understand that, and we think that needs to be recognized more. We probably haven't communicated that well. But we do think it's important that students graduate as soon as possible, and we still think that should be a goal, but we do understand. And personally, there was a woman when I was an undergraduate who got her degree after 60 years. I mean, she was 60 years old, but after 40 years, and then she got her master's in 1 year. It took her 40 years to graduate. So
we had the 83-year-old this year who got his associate's degree.
But we know the reality too is that person doesn't benefit as much as a person that does it sooner. So we want to enable what now is the normal student to reap those benefits as soon as possible, but it may not be always feasible within that period. So,
and that information coming back to us from you guys of what you've discovered and what you already have incorporated into your support and your planning and your preparation for what's going to go to the next legislative session is important to us to know. And I don't know, maybe there are some key members of faculty and staff and presidents and vice presidents who we might ask to come and talk to us as a group. And when I say us, I'm talking about you as the board and us as the committee about some of those specific challenges that we run into. That might be a good way to get some communication going on that.
Okay, William?
With regards to the tasks assigned to the council, I think the first two are very concrete and understandable. I think that 3 and 4 are somewhat nebulous still, and as we go forward within this respective council, those will become more and more clear. Given the economic impact in the state, it's been mentioned a couple of times with regards to the Eagle Ford Shell as well as the Midland-Odessa area. I think that will have an impact on closing the gaps, and I'm not clear on our role in providing guidance to the other 44 community colleges as far as the presidents, and then the other 44 community colleges as far as the trustees with regards to those targets. I think that still needs to be clarified, as well as the fourth item. Beyond that, I'm very pleased with the direction of the council and the topics that we've covered.
And I know you're brand new. Any comments for you?
Well, I don't have enough information or being new to make many comments, but I'm amazed to see, and I loved Roberto's comments that he made, being from the same area. We're hit with a double whammy in Cisco. We're a small rural community. The state has cut our funding. Our enrollment is down due to the tremendous oil play. I taught in high school 37 years, so I know all these young people of the community. They're going out and making fabulous salaries, and I can't blame them. But it's really hurting us. If it weren't for our Abilene extension, we would really be suffering locally. And I think these areas south of San Antonio to the west, all the way from us to El Paso, it has a huge impact on our function as a college because they don't have to go now. Now, who knows what the future holds, but right now, this is a problem that we're facing in our enrollment.
Have you had any meetings with some of these companies there that are hiring these people? Are there courses that you could help put out to give them even more equipped people?
Many of you may not be familiar, but it was in Texas Monthly. You know, just the little town of Cisco had the two guys that sold the Frac Tech Corporation out for $3.5 billion. And they've just built phenomenal things there in the community. I mean, stuff you would think would be in downtown Dallas. And we have been in association with them. They're very good with us, and they talk with us. But, you know, welding, things like that, some technical classes, yes, we have worked with them in that. But as far as the oil industry, no.
Well, welcome to our group.
Thank you.
And last but not least.
Let me say that I really appreciate the opportunity for us as presidents and trustees and the coordinating board to meet on a very regular basis to have this free exchange of ideas. I think that it speaks to the attitudes of all of those groups of wanting to collaborate and help our students be successful. So to me, that's probably the most important thing that we can do. And with respect to our assignments here, I think that 1, 2, and 4 all do talk about collaboration when it comes to the legislative agenda. On number 4, I like the idea that we're going to review the legislative agenda of TAC and of CAT, and that we're, along with the coordinating board, presenting a united front. I think that we will be more successful. I do agree with William. I think William made the comment on number 3. I am still a little bit confused about that, and maybe we can flesh that out as time goes along. That's about it.
Maybe we'll put that on our agenda for a little more discussion for the next meeting.
I'd like a request.
I was going to ask each of you two to comment anyway, so go ahead. What's your request?
We have requested nominees for our next higher education plan, specifically people who are not currently employed by schools. You know, that's a process we employed with the last plan. So former presidents, former faculty, or even business people in your community who aren't currently trustees. We've received relatively few nominees at this point.
Can you bump
I sent out an email to you yesterday. You probably haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, but the deadline is still tomorrow.
Well, if you come in with some later, we have to take these to our board by our meeting this at the end of this month, because we want to start in February. And we really would like nominees that have come from you. Better, we know of a number of people we can add in, but we'd like people that you'd like to be on that committee. We've had a number of people nominate current presidents, and they will have involvement, but we want people who don't feel they have to represent their particular interests setting the plan for the state. We may end up having, as it necessary, some task forces that would include currently employed folks if we need that. But we really want to make sure that people you think you'd like to have there speaking for the state, and particularly in this case community colleges, we really would like your advice. And
give us in a nutshell basically what they have to do. What's their responsibilities?
They're going to develop whatever is the next equivalent of closing the gaps. The latest date this can be done is July 2015. We're hoping for, our board would like for us to be done sooner. We think it will be, but it will be at least a year. There may be monthly meetings or at least meetings every 5 weeks. Depends on how they want to operate, but we found last time to get it done and keep people at the top of people's awareness, we had to do it regularly. That also allows for enough meetings for people to come in and reflect and provide feedback to the committee. So it would be something similar to your time commitment here, except monthly. It will be an interesting process. We'll have people coming and sharing with the committee that I think everybody would learn from. But we want to have people with good ideas who sort of sort through the clutter. Because at the beginning, if you get all the information out there, there will be a lot of information for people to have to deal with. While we have a starting point, the plan could end up very different than that starting point. So the beginning of this was at the governing board conference. We got some really good feedback from those of you who participated in the groups that day. For example, they pointed out that we still have a long way to go with participation, and that it's not included in that first framework and demographics, and we still have work to do on success. Those were two things that came out of that aren't directly reflected in that wave model. So if you have anyone, I mean, if they're nominated and we ask them to do it, we will explain more to them. We'll be willing to talk with them on the phone, but to some extent they're going to determine what the process is like by their own composition, because they're going to, just like you've wanted to work some ways differently than were originally imagined. We think we know how they're going to work, but they may want to do things a little differently once they convene as a group.
So if you know anybody, get in touch with David, right?
Or Raymond's fine, whichever one of us, just let us know, and we want to make it happen. And I just want to say again, and if we have a good group by the deadline we set, we will talk to the board and move forward. But if you come up with some names after that, don't hesitate to give them to us. We may make the committee larger, or we may not be there at the point, but we want to make it good.
Okay.
That request went out to the presidents, not to our committee.
No, not to your committee. We mentioned it, I think, at the last meeting, but it wasn't a direct request.
And just and name that group or that committee or that function again.
It's going to be, we don't, planning meeting. It's essentially the meeting for the next higher education plan. What we've referred to before is beyond closing the gaps, whatever that is. We don't have a name for the next plan because we don't have the plan yet. It wouldn't be bad to have a great marketing or advertising person who could help us come up with a good way to name the plan. But for this to work, we have to have real involvement. And last time we had thousands of people who provided information to this group one way or another. We went back and resurrected what we did. It was surprising how many responses we got. We got information out to the faculty groups. We had chambers. Chambers have been requested for nominees as well, you should know. But we've gotten just about as many nominees from that side as we have from institutions. A little bit surprised that we've gotten so few nominees from institutions. Help us, power to you. This is your chance to influence this place.
Just as a wrap up, any other comments on our charge? Both of you?
Well, I think the charge is broad and challenging and consequential. So I'm comfortable with it. We spent a lot of time talking about it and making sure that it was consequential. So I can't think of anything that's left out in this charge. I was thinking about as you were going around the table, and I mentioned this to David, that we're going to propose that we make a presentation to this group about database because I have a feeling that the higher education leaders don't fully understand how much data we have on every one of your campuses and how much we can tell you about what's going on at your campuses. We can tell you about your graduation rates, your completion rates, the number of hours that students accumulate before they complete a program. We can tell you how you compare with other institutions and
how much your graduates are earning.
How much your graduates are earning. One issue that I'm very concerned about is a kind of an idea of what we know about community colleges, two-year institutions generally, and I was stunned when I found out this piece of information. The national average of hours accumulated for the receipt of an associate's degree is about 68 or 69. Texas, it's well over 90. And that is a huge discrepancy that costs students, institutions, the state a ton of money. And I'd like to understand why that has occurred in Texas. And by the way, there's a similar gap between the number of hours accumulated in Texas by baccalaureate recipients compared to the national average. It's not as large, but it's significant. And so we want to understand this issue better, and this might be something this council could help us with. But I think it's very important for this council to get a full sense of how much information we have about all of your institutions.
Okay, David?
Well, I'm a data person, so I would just add into that. There are things that we review internally that we need to find a way of sharing with you, and there may be questions that we should be asking that we're not. You may not know that we sit down across 3 divisions on Fridays and actually review data. We've actually reviewed the oil field issue and salaries, and frankly, we've not seen the high salaries in large proportion that people are talking about, though we do see some. I'm thinking now we'll probably go and look in your area to see if your students are doing better there than others. But in many cases, the salaries were in the $25,000 range when you look at high school graduates, when they leave directly from high school. So, but we did find some $80,000 jobs for people directly out of high school. So it's uneven, but those are things where, at the very least, we should find a way to answer some specific questions you raised, and also so you'll know and be able to share with your colleagues where there may be some things where we can help you answer questions just because of resources we have, and just provide you with the data to use as you will, not to tell you what it means, but to give it to you, and then you guys can sit down and decide at your own campus. We have lots of data. You help provide that data. We want you to be able to use it better. Yes, sir.
David, I think it's important, too, that we understand the limitations of the data.
Sure.
I know that we're working on collecting data on students who transfer out of state, but I wonder about the salaries as well. And I say that because in the fall semester, Chevron came onto our campus to interview students who are graduating with the associate degrees in petroleum technology, and they offered positions to every single one of the graduates. Mm-hmm. That was the good news. And the bad news was that I think that there were limited positions available in Panola County because of the decline of the price of natural gas. And so some of the students were offered jobs in New Mexico and Colorado and Oklahoma. And Chevron's pitch to them was, we're a great company to work for, and you will eventually find your way back home. And we didn't necessarily think that was a bad thing.
No, that's a good thing. And we're aware of that as an issue, but that's a great case of where we ought to talk about some of these things together, because collectively we might be able to find a way to get a handle on those people out of state in a way we can't as an agency or as an individual school. But I can tell you, if you look at our data, we will put, and I insisted that this be put in our records, what percentage of the records were we able to match. So with some schools, you'll see it's 85%, others 56%. Now that say if it's 56 or 44, could be one of two things. Either they got a job out of state or they're unemployed. We don't know which. We don't make a statement, but both are possible. So if you look at, say, on the university side, because I had to explain this one recently, University of Texas is about 56 point something % match. Victoria is around, UH Victoria is about 80 something %. Now, if you look at the salaries, many of the salaries at Victoria are higher than those at UT Austin. Well, part of the reason for that is, one, a significant number at Texas going out of state to much higher paying jobs. But the other thing is those working students, coming to your questions, many of them had jobs while they were there, and they may have gotten a boost from the degree, they may not have. That's something else we need to do analysis for. But we know that those people were probably experienced workers when they graduated, while those at UT, their experience was some part-time work somewhere if they worked. So those are all things we need. And one thing that's important in terms of starting with the data, as Raymond mentioned, is I'm always concerned when we're always trying to figure out the same questions over and over again. I think there's some things where we have the answers, we need to get those and then say, what are the next questions so we can do better? Because a big point of us providing data and analysis is so you can be better informed in doing your work and some things you can't do locally. There's some things with your data that we don't have any ability to match because we'll always know your local area better. But we can do a better job of telling you, at least in the state where they go elsewhere. We've found, I've used this example before, one student that was enrolled in 6 institutions simultaneously. We thought there was identity theft. Turned out there wasn't. And this student was making an A in every one of 72 hours worth of courses, by the way. 3 community colleges, 3 universities simultaneously. But we need to work together. We've got a great data capacity in Texas, and we need to take it further. And one thing that's important to know is we took data that you're having to provide anyway for the purposes of formulas, and we're doing a lot more with it. So we're trying to get as much value added out of that data as we can. But we ask questions sort of from a state policy standpoint, but we need your help in asking not just those better, but what are useful questions for you locally? Where can we provide you some additional value added? And so we'd appreciate that help.
Okay. Well, I think I appreciate everybody's cooperation and input. Don't forget to mark on this. Make sure that yours is okay. I'd even say put okay by it. Leave it on the desk. Gary's going to pick it up. And I'd like to do a homework assignment. I'd like to get an email from each one of you with a couple of suggestions on just how we go about achieving each of the 4 different items there. Okay? So we can start zeroing in on it. All right? You all have my email address, right? Okay? If not, Gary's got it. Call me, whatever. And I think good meeting adjourned. Oh, one last thing. Mark, I think, would want you to know he's probably still on the road. Is that right? He got behind an accident that was, about a 14-car pileup, you said? So, pardon me, he's okay. Yeah, except I think he's probably pretty frustrated.
Where exactly is it?
Where is it? On south of San Antonio, between San Antonio and Corpus.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Sounds like we're safe.
Yeah.